So you're exposed to extra radiation in space. One of the results of the twin study is you get back to Earth and your telomeres are a different length than your twin brothers. Like, are you genetically younger now?
It's interesting. They thought initially, so when I got back, they looked at my telomeres, and despite the hypothesis, which was
Scott Kelly,
former NASA astronaut and U.S. Navy captain.
He is an American astronaut who made 4 space flights,
the longest of which lasted 340 days.
Microgravity, stress, radiation, whatever, all the different environmental factors, high CO2 on the space station, all these factors would have caused my telomeres to shorten compared to my brothers, but they actually got better. Initially, they thought it was due to the very controlled diet and exercise. We exercise a lot on the space station. They thought that was the reason. But about 6 months after I got back, NASA learned that the Japanese had a telomere experiment on the space station the same time I was there, in their module, one of these like automated things that kind of just runs itself. And the experiment was on telomeres on these little worms, and their telomeres got better too. And I never once saw them like running on a treadmill or working out or anything. So as they look more into it, they learn that radiation can cause a positive change in your telomeres.
Hi, Scott.
Hello, Michael.
I'll never forget when I first saw you. I don't think I've ever told you this, because I saw you before I personally met you. When you spoke at my last startup at Human, the cybersecurity company, and startups, we use a lot of either sports metaphors or space metaphors. So, and I'm a space metaphor guy. So I want to have things like a launch, not something like a kickoff. And so at Human, every year, our annual gathering we call Delta V, as a change in orbital velocity. And you spoke at our gathering, which was as inspiring as expected. But most impressive actually was the Q&A with my gang of hackers, and we're all throwing questions at you. And you were this laconic, funny, awesome, stoic. And I thought, I need to get to know this guy. And so I was so pleased later that my marketing guru, John Cropper, was able to connect us. And now we get to do this. So thanks for talking with us.
Yeah, I was talking to John yesterday.
Cool.
I don't know if you've talked to him recently. I should check in with him.
Yeah. I need to catch up with him. That man's always bouncing around the world doing something interesting.
Yeah, we're working on a NASA Corvette that we're gonna.
Oh, fantastic!
Nice.
Yeah.
Sounds awesome.
Where was that conference? I don't.
Oh, it was pandemic era, so it was entirely virtual. Yeah,
that's why I don't remember.
Right. Yeah. We used to gather people in New York, but then we spread out around the globe, and then of course no one could travel. So that was like the first time we were trying to do it virtually, and it was still good energy. So
it's hard telling jokes when you get feedback.
Yeah,
I don't know how comedians do it because I don't have that many jokes, but. I saw Norm Macdonald do a stand-up thing on Zoom, and it was missing a lot.
Oh, that's such a shame because he's a magnificent writer. Yeah,
without an audience, it's hard.
I remember the first time I met you. It was a super sunny day, which was it was a little bit over a year ago, and it was uncharacteristically sunny because during that time it was gloomy. So I'm like, wow, this is going to be a great day to meet Scott. And we had been talking to John, as Michael mentioned, and I had known about you before. So naturally, I was just skipping on my way to the co-working space and had to rent out a conference room to make sure that there were no distractions, and just being super excited to talk with you, talk about Fulcra and just getting to know you, and just being happy that I got to experience your humor and intellect, and thinking, we have to work with Scott. This is amazing. So a little over a year later, very excited.
You're building me up, I think, to just disappoint your audience.
No, I'm just being honest. So, but I remember as I got to know you better and as we worked with you, I started looking even more into some of your interviews and some of the documentaries that you did. And, but there was always something that was missing. And there were always questions that I always wanted to ask. So I'm really glad that Michael and get to have a chat with you. But I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about your year on the International Space Station and what you were there to learn.
Yeah. Man, that was a while ago now. It seems like it was like pretty recently, but it was 8 years ago. I remember my son, who's 20 years old, he said to me one day, he goes, "Remember when I was little and you were flying in space for a year?" I was like, to me, it just seems like yesterday, but it was 8 years ago. So when I landed, I guess he was like 12. Yeah, pretty wild to think. But yeah, it was, we launched in March of 2015, landed in March of 2016, not quite a year. It was wound up to be 340 days in space. Um, Me and a Russian guy were there the whole time together. I was there with as little as three of us for a short time, like maybe 6 weeks of the year. There was only three of us on board. Most of the time, there were six people. Um and then, over the course of that year, 13 other people kind of came and left. And then it was me and Misha every day. Yeah, we were there to do science and learn more about long duration human space flight. At the time, that was the longest flight of an American. But the idea is, someday we want to go to Mars, and Mars is really far away, and it's going to take like over 200 days to get there. Depending on how you do it, you're probably going to be in space for like a really long time, like 2 years maybe, and or on the surface of Mars. And when you're in space, we lose bone mass at 1% a month. You lose muscle mass if you don't do anything to prevent it. There's other negative effects. Radiation, get a lot of radiation in space. There's effects on our immune system, our genetics. So NASA wanted to, learn more about that and see the changes that occur, as the duration of spaceflight increases. Interestingly enough, my first flight I flew to the Hubble Space Telescope was 8 days. My second was 13 days. My third was 159 days, I think, right around there. And the third, 340. And some really smart person told me, if I graph that, that's a second order polynomial. So if I was to fly in space again, it'd have to be over 5 years. So
Right.
I'd have to
Nice.
Mars. Yeah.
That's excellent. And in the limit, it's infinite, which is a nice touch.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to come back to Earth, though. Did you ever see that show, The Expanse? I've only watched a couple episodes, but one way of torturing the people that live in space is to just put them in gravity as a
Right.
form of,
Right.
and I can relate.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. How long was that adaptation period? So you're back on the ground. How long does it take before you feel like, okay, I've like returned to baseline?
I would say 6 months, maybe. Yeah, one thing that's hard to return to, it's interesting, like one of the hardest things to get used to for me, living on the space station, is that you have this very structured schedule where, unless it's the weekend, even on the weekends, I mean, you're always paying attention to it. And so all your activities are, very, very highly controlled and scheduled. Some of them are 5 minutes long, some of them might be 8 hours if it's a spacewalk, but all day, every day, you're kind of following this line that's moving across the screen that is time as you hit these. And when you first get up there, it takes a while to get used to that kind of regimented life, which interestingly enough is when you get back it's hard to get used to not having it. You kind of miss it. I always felt like without that, this program called OS, geez, what was it called? Well, it just basically had our timeline, like kind of like a calendar almost, a very dynamic calendar. And when you get back, you feel like without that, you're a little bit aimless. Like I felt like I didn't know what to do because no one was telling me what to do.
Oh, so okay. Let's fast forward to today. Have you built some substitute systems? So like just
You have.
thank you. Yes, we're nerds about self telemetry. Yeah.
No, I have not built anything. Huh?
I was going to ask you because I saw on your Instagram that you did a cold plunge recently. So I was wondering if that's something that you kind of have in your routine or if it's.
Yeah. Yeah, it's yeah, we have this cold tub by this company called Renew, and it's a really great cold plunge. But I use it probably 2 to 3 times a week in our yard. 55 degrees. Apparently, it has pretty good health benefits for inflammation, um, immune system. Your apparently your has psychological like benefits as well, like for your mental health. I haven't noticed my mental health improving, but
I got to try this. For me, I think the cold plunge is psychologically a little easier than the cold shower. Like I've had on and off a cold shower practice, starting many years ago, and I've like never adapted to it. Right. So a cold shower today is like just as bracing as 10 years ago. Like,
yeah. Well, it's different because it's it's 55-degree water. I don't know what comes out of the tap. Probably here where we live, it's probably colder than
yeah,
that.
right. Cold mountain water.
Yeah, and yeah, it's just different. I mean, it cools you to the core, like to the bone. If you could stay in a minute, you could probably stay in for 5 minutes, but the first minute is hard. I'm going to Antarctica in over Christmas, and I'm a little worried if I can get into that water or not because that's significantly colder.
And I think like like so. I also have the cooling bed. I've got the 8 sleep bed.
Yeah,
We have that
I
in
have that
common.
too.
Yeah,
That thing's a game changer
I
for
think so too.
sleeping.
Yeah. Oh man, my wife likes it much warmer than me, and finally we can just be dialed in.
The other thing that's great about that bed, that mattress pad, actually, we have two of them. We have the whole mattress and the mattress pad, and there's no difference between the pad and the mattress. It's like the same thing. So if you have a mattress you already like, you just get the mattress pad. But the other thing that's great, the reason I like it is because we used to have to lower the temperature in our house at night, and I would wake up in the morning, it'd be an ice box in here because my wife sleeps hotter than I do, and now she just has her cold side, and mine's a little bit cooler, but not is cool but not cold, and the house can stay the same temperature.
Anything else in like your health stack?
Oh well, we do. So we have a sauna with a red light
Oh
thing.
yeah.
Oh,
Oh, how's that been
nice.
working? I've been thinking about getting one of those.
Yeah, my wife wanted it, and so I got it for her birthday, and I use it. I'll sit in there in the sauna for about 10 minutes before I jump into the cold plunge, which I'm not sure helps coming from the sauna. I don't think it matters where you're coming from; it's still cold. What else? Yeah, we got the sauna, we got a steam room, we got a pool, hot tub, a little mini health spa here.
I was going to say, I was going to ask if you measure the times that you go in, do the hot and cold. I don't know what to call it, the variation between the cold plunge and the sauna. Like if you track it
Oh
or if you monitor it or anything.
no,
That's fair.
I don't think it's. That's a good point. It probably should be in that Apple Health app that you, but I don't think it has just about everything else, but I don't think it has anything like that. I'll look just to keep track of it. That's interesting.
I know and then I was also curious because you were so you were so measured in space that if you kind of carried that practice when you came back here, or if it was just easier when
You know, I
you're
like
in space.
I like the kind of tech stuff that like this health app that um, tracks your exercise. I have a scale that is connected called Withings. It's really good. You step on the scale and it shows up on your phone, and it actually works. Like a lot of things, this stuff's getting better, obviously, but like a few years ago, you'd get something like that. They would have a hard time, connecting. Um, but that also records, like I have a blood pressure monitor that goes into that as well. Uh,
So in some ways, you're definitely better instrumented now than you were actually on the space station.
oh man, yeah, our house is pretty well wired with, you know, uh, voice activated stuff and very localized, like control of the music, TVs, lights. Yeah, pretty into this kind of tech stuff.
Anything you miss though? Was there some cool NASA gadgetry that hasn't made it into the consumer tech stack that needs to get pulled in?
When I was up there, we didn't have this. I was kind of sad it got there after I left. But the lighting now on board the space station is this circadian rhythm, um, and it'll shift, like wavelengths,
So the like the tone of
throughout
the
the
light
day.
changes.
Yeah, the
Nice.
color of the light changes throughout the day to, promote whether sometimes you have to shift your sleep in space for different activities. So it helps with that. Um, Lutron makes something now that is very similar that I want to get in my house, but haven't haven't done it yet. But yeah, other than that, our place is pretty wired.
What is I would love to also for you to really like paint the picture of your experience of tracking and monitoring everything for so long.
You're not like, so sometimes you're like wired up. Like if you're doing a spacewalk, you'll have the EKG leads on, but generally you're not wearing those on a daily basis on the space station. Depending on what kind of science stuff you're doing at the time, um, yeah, it can be, somewhat kind of invasive a little bit, I guess you'd say. You're taking your blood at times. You're doing other bodily function samples, as you could imagine. Your skin samples. Your a lot of medical tests, but it's not something. I think some people have this impression that on the space station you're monitored like 24/7 and your medical stuff is monitored 24/7 too, and it's not the case. I mean, we have like cameras on board, but you shut them off on the weekends or after working hours so the ground can't see what you're doing.
I have a weird instrumentation question. Informed by the digital twin that we made based on all of your writing. So because of that project, we imported much of what you've written in several interviews, which then I got to interact with, and so I could draw some themes from various sources. And one of the things that popped out at me is I saw you handle questions about like stress and getting along with people in confined space. And one thing that popped out at me when those questions get posed to you was this, I'll call it this like humble confidence that part of that's part of the job, and NASA knows it's part of the job, so they really try to screen people who are unusually like calm under pressure. Um, and but yeah, like that's actually a rare form of self knowledge, isn't it? Right? Like I haven't been screened for whether I'm good in confined spaces, so I guess I don't really know. Whereas you literally know, and like the how do you think that like that kind of psychological assessment and that sort of instrumentation has changed your own way of thinking about yourself? since you went through that process?
NASA does psychological screening when they select astronauts. They actually give us two written tests. One is a psychological test, and the other actually was an IQ test, which was interesting because I didn't even realize it was an IQ test until years later. They go, "Yeah, it was an IQ test." I was like, "Guess I passed," but I actually almost failed the psychological test because there's like an indicator. The guy who's the head of the selection board told me this years later. There's an indicator of if you're like, it can tell if you're not being completely honest because you're trying to give the answers you think they want to hear. And I almost tripped that indicator. I got really close to it where I would have failed. and they also screen you with you talk to psychologists, psychiatrists. So mental health is important, really important. It's the most complicated thing that we know of, right? The human brain. Yet there's this stigma attached to treating it, which makes no sense. But NASA does take that seriously. They you mentioned like this working under stress. If you come from the military, or I was a F-14 pilot and a test pilot, that's pretty much baked into that whole thing. Like if you weren't good at that, you wouldn't have been a successful military pilot. I mean, just landing aircraft, the F-14 on the ship is one of the most stressful things ever. I mean, more stressful than landing the space shuttle, actually. Uh, and so I think for the military folks, they're kind of, the military kind of takes care of that part. For the other folks that come from different areas of academia or industry, that don't have that kind of operational experience, I think they kind of look at them a little bit closer to try to assess. You mentioned like closed spaces. They don't do this anymore, but when I was selected, they wired you up, put a monitor, EKG monitor on you, put you in this thick rubber bag, zipped it closed, and pushed you into a closet with not knowing how long you were going to be in there.
Wow.
Did you know it was
Yeah.
a closet, or did they just put you in the rubber bag?
Yeah, they said this is what we're going to do.
Okay.
But they stopped doing that. I don't know why they stopped doing it. It seems like it makes sense, right? To make sure it's claustrophobic.
Also, how do you like, you don't know how you would respond, right? Like I don't know. Amna, how would you do in the rubber suit closet test?
Honestly, I think I would be like cozy. That's why I was asking if you had known if it was a closet or not. If I had known it was a closet, I would just kind of lay there like I'm in a sleeping bag.
I don't know why there was even a closet involved because it was this rubber bag you were in, like thick rubber. It was actually a device that they had designed for the space shuttle. It's called a rescue bag, where you can have like two space shuttles, and you could, if this one, couldn't come back, you could, instead of putting the people in spacesuits, you could just put them in this bag and then transfer them over.
Whoa. Okay, so that's one of those plans that were like in place, but apparently never used.
Yeah, I never
Wow.
used it.
Okay. So you're exposed to extra radiation in space. So one of the results of the twin study is you get back to Earth and your telomeres are a different length than your twin brothers. But wasn't it in the good direction? So it was like the radiation seemed to like trigger some repair. Like are you genetically or younger now?
It's interesting. They thought initially. So when I got back, they looked at my telomeres, and despite the hypothesis, which was, microgravity, stress, radiation, whatever, all the different environmental factors, high CO2 on the space station, all these factors would have caused my telomeres to shorten compared to my brothers, but they actually got better, which was surprising. Initially they thought it was due to the very controlled diet and exercise. We exercise a lot on the space station. They thought that was the reason. But about 6 months after I got back, NASA learned that the Japanese had a telomere experiment on the space station the same time I was there in their module, one of these like automated things that kind of just runs itself. And the experiment was on telomeres on these little worms, and their telomeres got better too. And I never once saw them like running on a treadmill or working out or anything. So as they look more into it, they learn that radiation can like cause a positive change in your telomeres. Uh, I mean, it could cause something else that's worse, maybe, but
Yeah, so it might
at
not be
least
a
for
good
your
trade, but
telomere.
that's an interesting
But
result.
they went back to where they were.
Oh! So the reversion to the mean eventually happened. Now that you're Earthbound.
Yeah, they returned within a few months.
It would be so interesting if it was the gravity that pulled them. Like a bio.
Nah,
No,
I think it's the radiation. I think they figured it was the radiation.
it's fair.
We're getting closer to some consumer grade testing of things like telomere length because people.
Oh, you can no, you can get the testing now. It's called Teleyears is the company, I think.
Oh! Have you tried it?
Yeah, I think I did when I got back to compare it to the NASA data.
Okay. Oh, this is something I need to do too. I just want my baselines.
Yeah, you can do it. It's just like a you know
Yeah.
mouth swab.
Uh,
But I don't know how useful it is. I guess you could have an impact in it if you decide to like start exercising a lot more or something. You can make it better.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of technology, so much because of AI, seems to be innovating so rapidly. I imagine that maybe if you have your baselines now, maybe in 2 to 10 years, there will be something that you can use the result of that to predict for yourself. I wonder, and I hope.
Man, AI is scary smart in some ways. That Chat GPT 4.0 is pretty good. Although it can't count dominoes. I was trying to get it to count dominoes. We play this domino game, and it won't. It can't accurately count them. That needs to be fixed. You'd think that'd be pretty simple.
I think the language models don't have a good world model yet, but the pace of progress is pretty good. So
I can't imagine how smart this thing's going to be in like a couple of years. I think here's when we're all in trouble. As soon as we can build a robot that can make a better robot on its own, then we're I don't know what happens after that. Maybe something good. I don't know. Maybe not. We'll have to see.
I think something good. I'm broadly optimistic about more intelligence in the world. I think it's
Yeah, I think
generally
so
been a
too.
good
I
thing.
think I mean, just think about like in the medical field, you just put all this data in there and it's going to figure out, you know, diagnoses and treatment and new modalities and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and just greater accessibility. I mean, obviously, all like literally all the doctors and nurses in the globe are time bound. They're time limited. So the uh, we you can't chat with them enough. It's literally a time shortage worldwide. So if there's some way to alleviate that, and you can just have some open ended questions, maybe with the bot at first before you escalate to the human, I think that could be a good thing.
So, do you think that, given what we just talked about, how important do you think it is to collect data now, even if you don't end up using it right away? Like getting it prepared for the future, I guess is what I'm saying, for these robots potentially, or for an AI medical assistant.
Incredibly important. It's interesting. Like if you think back to what before the internet existed, like especially stuff that happened in the news, like before, I would say maybe around 19, sometime in the early 90s. If you go looking for that, it's like almost like it didn't even happen, in some cases, because it never got captured. The data was never captured. I think it's a similar, I think there's an analogous relationship to our own personal data. Like we don't know now what we don't know, and that this stuff might be really useful later in life. Imagine like the health stuff. You can, if you're tracking certain health metrics, at some point you'll be able to put those into Chat GPT or something similar and have it, give you advice. But yeah, I think capturing that data is going to be important. And we don't know exactly why it's going to be important, but it's going to be important.
It's like a free insurance policy, right? Like as long as the data storage is cheap, why not just save it? Make your future self happy.
I was going to say it was super funny. I was at this AI event and somebody had created, they called it Twitter 95. So they had they changed the background of it to make it look like MySpace or what Twitter would have looked like in 1995. And they used today's celebrities and who were relevant back in 1995 and had AI come up with tweets for them. But it kind of talks to your point about what you're saying, where like those probably didn't exist back then, but it would have been nice to have them just so you can refer back to them.
Yeah, hopefully someday all that old info will make it online.
Yeah, right. My kids are having a completely different experience of their own growing up because it's photo documented in a way that I don't I don't have any pictures of me on a weekly basis going back to when I was a baby.
Imagine 100 years from now, people look like our ancestors or our descendants looking back at our photos and stuff and man, these people were weird.
Yeah, right.
1,000 years from now, I mean, is all it's stuff still going to exist? Maybe, I don't know.
Yep.
Maybe we should purge it at some point. All over.
I've been wondering if words on clothing is going to just stop being a thing, and that's how people in the future will recognize the 20th, mid 20th to mid 21st century. Oh, look, they put words on their T-shirt. It's definitely 20th century.
I got a guy. Going.
Oh, that's fabulous.
With his luggage.
All right, let's hold on. Let's inspire some entrepreneurship by talking about problems that need solving. So first, a personal one. What's a nagging problem in your life that you actually can't wait for an AI to just solve for you?
Good question. Right at this very moment, it's getting somebody to fix my wife's car that I put a big ding in this damage to it.
Does she know?
Yeah, she knows, but it's all my fault, and I don't want insurance to pay for it. But to get someone to fix your car, not through insurance, is really hard. I think I might try to get ChatGPT to help me but that is a problem. Getting somebody to do something, in this case, auto body repair is not the easiest. We had 2 cars damaged by hail here last year, about this time last year, and it took me almost a year to get them fixed. So, right now that's my biggest nagging problem.
Nice. I do actually think that there's going to be an AI solution to that, which is looking ahead to personal AI agents. There's got to be just some way you can delegate this to your agent, and then your agent talks to the auto body shop agents, and they just figure it out, right? And just show up on Wednesday, right?
Yeah, just say, hey, I need to find an auto body shop in the Denver area that will take a customer pay repair job, and maybe put the pictures in there, and then they could go out. Yeah, that would be a good thing for somebody to put together. I'm sure someone's working on it already, right?
Yeah, I love those coordination complexity problems.
AI assistant.
I could see the benefit of that too for things around the house. I've been trying to install shelves for so long, but getting all the parts, getting it together, it can be difficult. And imagine if there was an AI agent that could talk to a robot or something, and the robot could scan for studs in the wall, or I have brick walls, and know where to put the pins, or not the pins, the nails in. It'd be very nice and very easy and just stress-free.
I've been using ChatGPT, as my carpenter consultant. So, I want to fix something around the house. And I have an idea of the Michael Tiffany way of doing this. But I want to know, is that am I being an idiot? Or how would a pro actually do it? So I'm using ChatGPT to be my error control. Is it?
Seems to work pretty well. I asked it recently, what are the first 100 steps to removing a brain tumor?
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it's pretty interesting, actually.
Nice.
It got up to about 75 steps. And I asked a doctor who's not a brain surgeon, but he's a neurologist to look at it. He goes, yeah, it looks pretty good.
Wow.
Actually didn't look too hard. Like, I think with that, I could have probably done a brain surgery.
That's funny. I have brain surgery devices at my house from before. So I used to work on them. That's funny. Now I'm curious. I wouldn't use it, obviously, on anyone, but now I'm curious to see if it will tell me to use one of them. Um, yeah. Um, Kind of circling back to our earlier conversation, also, Scott, I have to ask if you would ever pay for a commercial space flight or if you think that space tourism is going to be more accessible in the future.
Huh. Well, would I pay for it? It would depend on what kind of space flight you're talking about, like, and how much it would cost. Uh, I probably would not because it's really expensive, and I have flown in space 4 times, and it didn't cost me a penny. Uh, so yeah, I don't know if I would do it myself, but um, and for me, I think it was always my job. It wasn't like I was doing it for a joyride. So uh, if there was a reason to fly in space again, I would if it made sense for me. But there's other people that could do that. Uh, so I probably wouldn't pay for it, but I know other people would, and I would encourage them, especially if they can afford it. Um, it's quite the experience.
What would you recommend to the space tourist as like the right amount of time to spend up there to get the full experience, if you will?
Well, it's all different. So, like, what Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin do, they do a suborbital ballistic uh, flight profile that gives you, I don't know, several minutes of microgravity and view of the Earth from like 50 miles up. So you see the blackness of the sky, and you could see the curvature of the Earth. It is round. I can confirm that to all the flat earthers out there. If when you drive from Kansas into Colorado, the first thing you see are the tops of the Rocky Mountains. You don't see the bottom, which is much closer to you.
That's a good one. I'm adding that to my quiver of anti-flat Earth arguments.
Yeah. Anyway, so there's that experience, and that's the cheapest one. Like I don't know what Blue Origin costs, but Virgin I think is on the order of a few $100,000. And then there's all the way to flying to the space station, the Axiom Space. That they had some private missions. Those have been a week to 2 weeks. Uh, I've flown in space for a couple of weeks. I've flown in space for months. It's completely different experiences. And it's kind of like the difference between, going on vacation and just moving to a place. When you live there, you experience a place in different ways. And if you're just visiting. Um, of all my 4 space flights, I would say the one was most enjoyable was the longest one, because I just have more memories of it, or most of the memories. Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, just moving around in space, like unless you've been there for months, you don't move around the same way as if you've lived there for a long time. Like it would be funny when a space shuttle would come up to the space station and you've been there for a long time. Everyone's like floating around like Superman, or they look like alligators in the water. But if you've lived there, you kind of move around erect, like upright, like you're walking. But and even yeah, even with your toes, you kind of move around with just your toes, whereas other people are like, yeah.
Wow. That that's a cultural difference. There's like, wow, the space resident culture. It's different than the
Yeah,
space
the
visitor
toe.
culture. That's incredible.
The big toe is important in space. If you didn't have big toes, it would be hard to move around. See here, looking. I have a picture of my toe after being in space for a year. Let me
No
find
kidding.
it.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, like all the calluses fall off the bottom of your feet, but then the
Whoa!
top of your feet get pretty. You get a big old callus thing on it.
Oh,
See if I got
interesting.
there.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Where's my toe picture?
Physical adaptation
Yeah,
that I did
see if
not
I can find it.
Yeah.
Apparently, I typed toe into the photo app. And,
Too many results.
oh, here it is.
Whoa.
Wow. Oh, that's
That's a
wild.
year. That's a year of propelling myself with my right big toe.
Oh man. Oh, that's awesome. Oh, we're gonna have to share that photo on the website with the transcript of this. People gotta see that.
Space toe.
What, Scott, what is the number one question that people ask you about being an astronaut? And what's the one question that you wish more people asked you?
How was it? Is the number one question. Um, I wish people wouldn't ask me about space. What's the question I wish people would ask me more about? I don't know. I don't know. A lot of people just, how was it? You know? Uh, yeah. Yeah, I can't really think of what I wish they would ask me more about. Yeah. Some people have good questions. Some people not so good. Some people ask you questions, and then in the middle of you answering them, they'll ask you another question. So
I want to know more about how you look so badass at 60. Like, what? So, okay, so we've got the cold plunge.
yeah, well, there's a whole cat.
That's amazing.
We advertise. I think you used the word cold and stoic in the same sentence earlier, Michael. Right? With the hat to prove it.
Nice.
I recently started. I wore this. So, like a year and a half ago, I wore this glucose monitor, this Levels app that basically teaches you about your metabolism and kind of shows you stuff teaches you already know, stuff you already know, like carbohydrates in large numbers is bad for your blood sugar and your metabolism. But seeing it real time is was important to me, and since then I've lost some weight and exercise much more, and yeah, that was a year and a half ago, and I only wore it for a month too, but it was enough. Actually, I wore it a month, and then a year later, I wore it for another month as like a refresher. But yeah, that was very powerful for me, and yeah, now I'm swimming and exercising, not every day, but most days.
Ooh, so that was the catalyst. I like that.
Yeah, that was a powerful thing at Levels. Probably one of the best investments I've ever made anything in my life, and it was like $250 for a month of monitor.
Yeah, our co-founder Ash also, like, he pulled his CGM data, also a Levels customer, um, into his Fulcid dashboard along with his sleep data, and also figured out he found a glucose spike correlation with his sleep, and if he changed when he ate carbs, he also got better sleep outcomes, which was like mind blowing. Because we did not think that those two things would be related, right? It seems categorically different, but actually, of course, they're related in retrospect. And so once he had the data all on an integrated timeline, yeah, it's pretty cool.
And it was the same for me too. I had a CGM earlier this year, I believe, or later last year, and I realized that because I was also tracking anxiety, and I had anxiety when I would eat really sugary things. So random, but it was nice to know that. Yeah, and the things that I thought would spike my blood sugar actually ended up not spiking my blood sugar, and the things that did, it was just a very interesting finding. So it's nice.
I've been treating anxiety with fat, specifically with macadamia nuts. So yeah, like if I'm if I'm stressed, now my go-to stress eating is macadamia nuts. Doesn't spike the blood sugar, does give me kind of comforting fat. It totally works.
Amazing. Should try it.
Does the chocolate covered macadamia nuts work the same way? Because those are delicious.
I know, right? Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, one of our co-founders lives in Hawaii, and when we get together, she brings the chocolate-covered macadamias. Yeah.
Yeah, those are dangerous.
If it's dark enough chocolate, Dr. Michael says it's good.
So, I guess we're coming to an end of our lovely conversation. But Scott, I wanted to also ask, how can people follow you online?
I have a Twitter and Instagram account. It's called Station CDR Kelly. We chose those names when my brother was going to be on the space station at the same time I was there to kind of play off of our different roles. But yeah, I have a Twitter account and Facebook and Instagram. But I'm not posting a whole lot on Twitter these days. It's just kind of turned into, like, I do once in a while, but it just turned into such a hellscape. You say things, you say something on there, and then in some cases people are, even maybe threaten violence, your opinion about something. It's so ridiculous where this country has gotten to online with the discourse, and it's just so ugly. And I try to stay away from it these days. But
It's a weird comment culture, isn't it? Like, at first I was thinking, oh man, this is depressing about humanity. But it's also, I can't imagine that this isn't also a solvable problem with the algorithm, right? Like why is my content being routed to the people who just want to hate on it? Like this is the wrong match.
yeah, right.
Yeah, but it's very true.
Yeah, but Twitter's become a hellscape of hate. Maybe Elon's listening.
Yeah, there's like algorithmic curation has got to. That's another AI problem we need our listeners to solve. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.